So one word is a little bit of a challenge, so let me use a few words to describe it. I think I'll describe it as delivering on the promise, right? So we've been working on eSIM for the last 6 years as an industry and within Core as well. It's a big topic, and finally I think it's happening, right? So whereas previously we were still relying on roaming solutions, we can see that nowadays with the changing landscape of roaming, which is less and less possible, it's more expensive, there are restrictions from a regulatory perspective, from a permanent roaming perspective. So eSIM profiles are becoming more important to actually serve our customers to deploy global solutions. So I would say delivering on the promise, something that we would have seen happening for a few years, is actually happening right now.
So I will not use one word, but I will use 3. No way back. You all see on the news last fall that Apple was announcing the iPhone 14 being eSIM only in the US. It is not yet done for every region, but we do expect that in the future that will become a reality. We believe that whatever the market, being the IoT, the M2M, it will be the same trend in the future. Maybe a bit later, but there is no brainer that it will become reality.
There is no way to avoid it in a way. And some say that it's even the eSIM and the ability to localize the Connectivity Act is even will replace the roaming altogether. We do not feel that, at least in the coming years, but it will take a significant role in the flexibility and diversity that customers are looking for in order to provide global connectivity altogether.
The big move of last year with Apple launching eSIM-only smartphones in the US was very important. I think it's a big milestone for the market, and we expect other smartphone makers to follow in the coming years. On the IoT side, I think the need to connect more and more objects, more diverse, to cover more use cases is still there. So both the COVID and I think the Ukraine conflict with the difficult macroeconomic conditions have not impacted these needs, and maybe reinforced them as well.
The promise of having a lot of operators available on an eSIM technically is correct, but in terms of actually being happening, it's there, but it's not to the scale of having each and every operator out there available on eSIM. You ask the question, why? And the reason for that is because it's technically kind of difficult to start integrating operators onto the eSIM ecosystem. So that's been recognized by the community, especially with respect to the M2M spec. They've now realized in terms of where those complexity points are, they're trying to remove that out.
That will unlock eSIM even further. So we can see customers having specific requirements on their deployments, which kind of requires a proprietary solution right now where we try to fit a square peg in a round hole. And I think with the IoT standard for the SGP 3.2, that's going to change. And I think that's really going to unleash all use cases, going from the low bandwidth, low power solutions to the high end. So it will serve all use cases going forward, including the consumer use cases, obviously. So it's a big change, and we're looking forward to that.
The market was waiting for this standardization to come to act. Eventually, each of the players, whether it was a SIM vendor or other solution providers, device makers, were putting their own proprietary solutions, which was not making sense. Eventually, eSIM, and by the way, and iSIM altogether, could only happen if there is a standard that everybody is following. This will make all of the move towards eSIM and iSIM more coordinated. Everybody will adopt to the standard, and this is part of the breakout that we are talking about.
So right now, the biggest issue is the spec is close to getting released. Once it gets released, it has to go through a testing cycle. The tests have to be approved. As soon as that happens, there has to be somebody big that starts adopting it. And once they start adopting it, you're going to see chips coming out in the market with that particular spec. So we're at the stage where it's about 80 to 90% out there. Give it another year to a year and a half before you're going to start seeing chips coming out with that spec as well as the back-end system in production.
the main barriers that we see today on the market, this is the complexity of the ecosystem. This complexity has a huge impact for our customer. When you want to onboard a new MNO, for example, for an enterprise customer, it takes weeks and not to say months in order to have it live on the field. So it becomes impossible for those customers to onboard thousands of MNOs to deliver their solution. So that's something that it will not be possible to cope with.
There are different types of barriers. The first ones are maybe related to the macroeconomic conditions. It's more difficult to launch new products for device makers clearly today. So that's one thing, and this is why we expect mid-range smartphones only this year in volume, and that was the reason clearly. On the other side, there's a need to develop the awareness around eSIM for the end users on the consumer side.